You ever watch someone steal $2 million and smile while doing it? I did. He was my boss, my mentor, the golden boy of the board. And for 18 months, I helped him build the very machine he used to rob the company. The thing is, I wasn't blind. I was patient. Because when you expose a man like that, you don't just accuse him. You make sure he loses everything overnight. This is how I dismantled a $2 million embezzlement scheme and erased my boss from the corporate world in less than 24 hours. The first time I realized Daniel Mercer was lying, he was smiling. Glass-walled auditorium. Quarterly town hall. Company-branded backdrop glowing in blue. We were a global fintech firm clearing billions in cross-border payments. Lean, aggressive, efficient. Daniel stood center stage, tailored suit, perfect posture, the kind of executive who practiced vulnerability in front of a mirror. "We've had to make hard decisions this quarter," he said, "but integrity remains our core value." 200 employees nodded. 10 minutes earlier, he'd announced a 7% workforce reduction. "I work in internal financial controls, mid-level, not senior enough for prestige, not junior enough for ignorance." I knew revenue was down, but not layoff down. And when someone says integrity too often, they're either defending it or compensating for its absence. The first irregularity appeared 3 days later. It wasn't dramatic. No offshore shell company in neon lights. Just a vendor payment. $184,000. Consulting services. Approved by the COO's office. Expedited. The vendor name, Ardent Strategic Solutions. The problem? We already had a strategic consultancy on retainer. And Ardent had never appeared in our vendor database before. I did what analysts do. I flagged it. Quietly. The COO's assistant replied within 6 minutes. Approved per CEO directive. That's when my stomach tightened. Daniel rarely approved operational payments directly. He delegated everything. Except compensation. Except equity. Except anything touching personal leverage. So I pulled the vendor file, and that's when the pattern began. Over 4 months. 6 payments. All under $250,000. Total, $2.03 million. Always just below internal board review thresholds. Always marked Strategic Expansion Advisory. Always approved late on Fridays. No contract attached. No deliverables logged. No performance review. And here's the thing about fraud. It's rarely creative. It's repetitive. Careful, boring, patterned. I ran Ardent through our compliance system. Registered 6 months ago. Address, shared workspace in Delaware. Director, a holding entity. Ownership, private. That's when I checked the holding entity and found the first real thread. One of the beneficial signatories had a middle initial matching Daniel Mercer. Middle initials are dangerous things. They hide in plain sight. I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Because you don't accuse a CEO of embezzlement. You build a case so airtight. They accuse themselves. I tested something small. I emailed Ardent requesting standard vendor compliance documents. Tax ID confirmation, insurance, statement of work. No reply. 3 days later, I escalated internally. Compliance marked it executive level approved. That meant someone above my pay grade was shielding it. I ran one more search. Daniel's wife. Board member of a private investment vehicle. Guess what Ardent's holding entity was invested in? Same vehicle. Different layers. Same address. The pieces aligned slowly, like a lock clicking open. $2 million. Siphoned in increments. Through a vendor that didn't exist. Signed off by a CEO who just laid off 120 employees. That's when I made a decision. Not moral. Strategic. I anonymously submitted a risk memo to our audit committee. Not an accusation. A control weakness concern. Specifically referencing vendor approval layering under executive override. No names. Just process gaps. Audit responded immediately. They scheduled an internal review. Daniel didn't panic. He smirked during the executive meeting. Routine governance housekeeping, he said. That was mistake number 1. Because governance housekeeping leaves fingerprints. I made sure Ardent's files were incomplete. I made sure compliance logs showed repeated document requests. I made sure timestamp trails were preserved. Then I waited. If you've ever worked under a leader who talked about integrity while quietly bending rules, you know exactly how this feels. Drop a like if you've dealt with corporate hypocrisy. It tells the algorithm this story deserves daylight. The audit committee asked for vendor substantiation. Daniel requested to handle it personally. Mistake number 2. Because when an executive inserts himself into documentation retrieval, auditors get curious. Ardent submitted retroactive contracts. Backdated. Sloppy. The metadata betrayed them. Created 2 weeks prior. I didn't need to speak. The numbers spoke. But I still needed protection. So I contacted outside counsel. Quietly. I structured a whistleblower package, conditional. If I were terminated within 12 months of audit findings, documentation would escalate to regulators automatically. Insurance. Not revenge. Yet, the turning point came during a closed-door board session. I wasn't inside, but I knew the agenda. Vendor irregularities. Governance breach. Conflict of interest review. Daniel tried to frame it as an oversight. A family investment overlap, he said. Unintentional. Small. Inconsequential. Except it wasn't disclosed, which violated board policy, and fiduciary duty, and securities law exposure during funding. That's when the independent director asked the question that ends careers. Did you personally benefit? Silence is loud in glass rooms. 3 days later, Daniel was placed on administrative leave. Public statement, temporary absence pending review. Stock dipped 6%. Internally, panic spread like smoke. If you think executives are untouchable, remember this moment. Accountability doesn't move fast. But when it moves, it crushes. Comment below. Would you have exposed it or stayed silent? The forensic audit expanded. They didn't just find $2 million. They found expense manipulation. Travel reimbursements routed through Ardent. Personal investment transfers disguised as advisory fees. The number grew to $2.7 million. Daniel resigned for personal reasons. But that wasn't the collapse. The collapse came from leverage. Our lead investor withdrew from the funding round. Without Daniel, valuation dropped. Equity packages restructured. The board, complicit in early shielding, replaced 2 members to appease investors. Overnight, the executive team fractured. Coup exited. General counsel pursued new opportunities. In 1 week, 3 careers evaporated. And I said nothing. HR called me in. Promotion. Director of Internal Controls. Significant raise. Retention equity. They called it recognition. I called it containment. Because here's what corporate revenge really is. Not screaming. Not lawsuits. Not public drama. It's precision. Daniel tried to settle quietly. Regulators reviewed disclosures. Civil penalties followed. His reputation? Irrecoverable in finance. He moved into private consulting. Smaller clients. Smaller rooms. Smaller applause. He never knew exactly how the audit began. And I never told him. Because the most devastating revenge is letting someone wonder which moment destroyed them.